Is it your way, Kayla? Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Gish. I'm with the Museum Programs Department here, and on behalf of the museum, I'd like to welcome you all to today's program. Just a few housekeeping things. If you have a cell phone, please turn it off. We're webcasting, and it's a distraction if they do go off. We're going to have time for questions after the program, and we'll have a mic. Bridget there will bring the mic around so that our webcast audience can hear the program. I hear cell phones. Thank you very much for turning them off. Now I'd like to ask Rebecca Head-Troutman, who's the curator of the Vantage Point Native Contemporary Art Exhibition on view now on the third floor. I recommend everyone go see it if you haven't already. Introduce today's speaker. Rebecca?
Good afternoon and welcome. Thank you very much for joining us for a special talk by distinguished artist Kay WalkingStick, one of a series of artist programs that the National Museum of the American Indian is presenting in connection with the exhibition Vantage Point, the Contemporary Native Art Collection. It's a great pleasure and honor to introduce Kay WalkingStick. Over the course of a career spanning 45 years, she has created richly textured and evocative paintings addressing issues of mixed ancestry, personal and collective history, and physical and spiritual relationships with the land. Her seminal work, the Chief Joseph series of the 1970s, is featured in the Vantage Point exhibition. WalkingStick was a professor of art at Cornell University from 1988 to 2005. She became the first Native American artist in 1995 to be included in H.R. Jansen's History of Art, considered an essential art history survey text. She's been honored with many awards, including a Joan Mitchell Foundation Award, the Eiteljorg Museum's Distinguished Artist Award, a National Honor Award for Achievement in the Arts from the Women's Caucus for Art, a Visual Artists Fellowship in Painting from the National Endowment for the Arts, and most recently the prestigious Lee Krasner Grant from the Pollock Krasner Foundation. She holds a Master of Fine Arts from Pratt Institute and will be awarded an honorary doctorate this spring by Arcadia University. WalkingStick's work has been collected and exhibited nationally and internationally by numerous institutions, including the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the National Gallery of Canada, Montclair Art Museum, Detroit Institute of Arts, Heard Museum, Cherokee Foundation, and the Israel Museum in Jerusalem. She lives in New York, where an exhibition of her new paintings, titled Living in the City, Painting in the Wild, is on view at the June Kelly Gallery through May 7th. Please join me in welcoming Kay WalkingStick.
If you hear a cell phone go off, it's probably not mine. I seem to have lost mine, but it could be anywhere. Should we call you? Please don't. Sike Udolonovsti Chalagi. It's nice to be here. It's nice to be in Washington. It's nice to be at the NMAI. I want to tell you a little bit about what I'm going to do. This is a very academic thing to do, I know, but I have to do it. I'm going to talk about my work more or less chronologically, and then I'm going to try to contextualize a little bit by showing works that I was looking at the time. And I will try not to recap when I finish, because that is academic. I should use this mic. Well, maybe I won't. Is it on? It is? The painting that you're looking at was done in 1965. It's Kay when she still had a neck. I was 30 years old. I was a married lady, had 2 kids, had not yet gone to graduate school, was painting in the style that was popular more or less at the time, a kind of hard-edge acrylic painting. But most of it was abstract at the time. I was doing other things with it. the painting that you see behind me, the nude, is more or less what I was working on at the time. You know, they're very different. The color on the computer is totally different. Isn't that interesting? Oh, well. This was the period of the feminist movement. And there was, I think, a revolution, if you will, in the way we thought about our own sexuality. And so these paintings reflect those two ideas somewhat, I think. And this is called Me and My Neon Box. I had a gallery who insisted that I change the name of this to the women because she thought it was lewd. Those were the days. Anyway, I was doing these hard-edged figurative works. This was late 60s, early 70s. This is a painting that's in my show right now. This is called Autumn's End. It's a painting about the Ramapo River. My husband and I go out there and take a lunch, and we do drawings and take photographs. And this is about that place. And I did a long series of paintings about the Ramapo River, some of which I'll show you later. But I wanted to show you the stretch of time and the changes from these hard-edged figurative works of the 60s to these rather, I would say, straightforward, realistic paintings of the Ramapo River area. This, of course, has leaf in it. That happens to be aluminum leaf. I'll show you more of these later. By the way, could we possibly do anything about the light in here? The slides would be much stronger if there was a little less sunlight. Can we lower the shades or anything? Will these go all the way down? I should have thought of that before. This piece is called For John Ridge. I don't know, is that any richer? Yes. Yeah, good, good. See, magic happens. In 1972, I believe, or maybe it was about 1970, I had wanted to go to graduate school after I got out of college, and I didn't have the money, and I had babies, and I mean, you know, it's just way too complicated. But I found out about the Danforth Fellowship for Women in about 1970 and applied for it, studied for my GREs, and did all right, and won this fellowship, which was a huge deal, and paid for my way to graduate school, would pay baby care. I mean, it was really a great program. I'm sure they don't have it any longer. It was too good to last, you know. But anyway, I won this Danforth and went to graduate school in 1972. At about that same time, as you probably realize, the American Indian movement was very active. They took over Alcatraz in, I believe, 73. So that all of this really revolutionary changes were happening at this time, all of which affected me. I don't know how you could have been alive at that time and not been affected by it, after all. But the women's movement made me realize. I mean, I'd grown up with this notion that I was expected to do things. Smart little girl like you, make something of herself, okay? Was what I was told. So I was expected to do things. I grew up around women who worked. My father was not in the picture. So consequently, I knew that I was going to do something with my life and go to school, and I was expected to do things. But I think that the women's movement pushed me along a little. It just shoved me a bit. It was just another reminder that smart little girls make something of themselves. So I went off after this fellowship and got it and went to graduate school. But the Native American movement also had a big effect on me because it made me realize that I had to find out about my history. This is, as I said, for John Ridge. John Ridge was the man who led the Cherokees across the southern part of our country to Oklahoma. I'm an Oklahoma Cherokee. And it's a bloody history. Like most history, it's bloody. And so this is about this brave and brilliant and tragic figure who was murdered. I've been told by historians that he was assassinated, Kay. I'm sorry, he was murdered. My grandfather's name was John Ridge WalkingStick, by the way. He was not of the Ridge family, but he was obviously Ridge Party. But that's politics. Enough of that. This is Deborah Butterfield, is that her name? Susan Rothenberg, thank you very much. The brain goes. A lot of things don't go, but the brain goes. Anyway, this is Rothenberg for about that time. This is 1975, I think. And what I wanted to point out about this is that there's remaindered lines in this. You see these lines? And it's a very iconic kind of a look, right? And it has a single color in black and white. Very simple, very straightforward. It has an image, but it retains a kind of abstraction. And I think that that probably was what I liked about it. Anyway, getting back to my interest in Indian history. So I was raised in a white Protestant culture by my Scotch-Irish mother. Her name was Emma McKeag WalkingStick. Hence the wavy hair. But I was raised with this notion that I was a Cherokee woman. You know, stand up straight, Kay. You're a Cherokee. Be proud of who you are, is what she was telling me. Which is, of course, what we should all tell our children, whatever our backgrounds, right? So that this woman, although she was separated from her husband, she was alone in the world. She didn't have any support from him. She had 5 kids to raise on her own. She was proud that her last name was WalkingStick. She was proud that she had Indian children. And she expected us to be proud of ourselves. So she was a great woman, in a way very beyond her era. She was born in 1898. So anyway, in the public schools in Syracuse, New York, in the 40s, there certainly was not any kind of education about Indians. And what I knew about Indians, I knew from popular culture, you know, comic books, movies. We would sit in the back of the theater and cheer the Indians, you know, yay! But that was what I knew and what most people knew about Native Americans in those days. So that I realized, and in around 1970 or so, that I had to find out more. I was not a kid then. I was a grown woman. But it was time that I came to accept all that. And this piece you're looking at is a painting that's based on actually a teepee that I made. And this is called Teepee Form, and it was made in graduate school. I was experimenting with different ways of making paintings. And this is acrylic with poured ink. And I had a teacher then who said, I was making some drawings of teepees, and and writing about them in sort of conceptual haiku crapola, and really dopey stuff, you know. And because I thought it was funny, I was just making fun of this, a lot of what was going on at the time. And but he commented on the teepees. He didn't think that it was all funny as I did. He said, "Oh, you can't do that, Kay. It's too ethnic. You can't do teepees." So I, of course, made a painting of a teepee and a giant teepee for him. I didn't like, even then, being told what to do. At any rate, I was, as I said, doing a lot of research about my own history, about my family history, and one of the few things that my father ever said to me, I was, as I said, not raised with my father, and one of the few things he said to me, I asked him, "What Indian do you honor? What historical Indian do you honor?" Because all the Indians that you heard about in the movies were Indians who were supposedly bad people, right? And I knew that they were good Indians, and I wanted to know who they were historically. And he said, "Well, there's no one that's more important or better or more intelligent than Chief Joseph." And Chief Joseph was a great speaker, but he was also a great military man, and my father would have admired that. At any rate, I did these paintings that have to do with the story of Chief Joseph. And I'm going to leave it to you to look up the story of Chief Joseph, but suffice it to say that my father was right. He was a brilliant military man, and who lost. And he held off the cavalry for months as he took his band across the mountains and into Montana and north to Bear Paw, where he finally surrendered, only 30 miles from the Canadian border. He was with 750 people and their ponies. He surrendered thinking that he would be allowed to go home, and he was not. His people never went back to their reservation in the Wallowa Mountains. And the people now, the Nez Perce that I know of, are at the Umatilla Reservation in Oregon. So he didn't, the general to whom he surrendered made promises that he couldn't keep. At any rate, I saw this as a tragedy, as I do much of our history. And so this is a tragedy, this piece that you will see in the Vantage Point show. There are, I believe, 27 of them up. 36 of them were made originally. They were about this history to me, but if you see them as minimalist abstractions using two arcs, or two small arcs and two large arcs on a rectangular field, that's fine. That's fine. They can be seen simply as abstractions, part of the New York minimalism of the 70s. They were done from 1970, I think, 6 to about 1977, 78. This is just a small sampling of them because it's very difficult to make an image of the whole thing and show it this way. But let me tell you a little bit about the way they were made. This is a stain in ink. It is covered with an acrylic mixed with wax. The wax is the paint is put on either with my hands or a knife. These lines are cut with a blade, and this is like a border. You can probably just barely see it, but it is taped on and pulled off after the paint is put on. So there are no brushes in these. They are handmade things, and they look handmade. When you go into the gallery, they look handmade. They're not pristine in any way, and not meant to be. As I said, I was intrigued by this notion of a remaindered line, and that's what these are. These are not painted lines, they remain. I didn't paint the edges. In other words, they're remaindered. I don't know how else to put it. I did all the variations as far as I know. The process of making them is very clear, and all those ideas are very much a part of 70s New York abstraction. But I hope the notion that, I hope that doesn't stand in the way of seeing what is going on. There is an emotionalism that is projected by the paint that I don't think you have to have an art education to get. And the repetitive quality implies movement or a dance, but the design of the pieces themselves are very static. There is a stasis in these pieces that implies death, as does, I would think, the color. So that there's an attempt here to imply ideas through totally visual means. This wonderful deer's head is from Spiro Mound. I think it's Oklahoma, isn't it? And I just saw it yesterday in real life. It was just such a thrill for me. It's small. It's maybe 8-10 inches, plus the horns. It looks gigantic here, but it's small. And it is very handmade. Talk about having a handedness. This really does. If I didn't touch it, I don't think, with my bare hands. I had gloves on. But if you touched it, you would be touching something that was made in 1100 AD, or about then. Very old, very redolent of humanity. It's just loaded. It's a loaded thing. I saw a lot of art of this nature when I was making those Chief Joseph pieces at the Michael Rockefeller wing of the Metropolitan. It's mostly African and South American, but nevertheless, that work also has this handedness, this aura of humanity about it that had a big effect on me and had a big effect on the way that I worked in the future. You can see that this is not tidy. This is not tidy stuff. This piece is called For Little Crow. Little Crow is told about in Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee. It took me a year to read that book. I would read it for a while and get upset and put it down for a month or two and pick it up and read it. Anyway, I'm not going to tell you all the stories, but this is the next series of work I did after the Chief Joseph series. And it also is handmade. This is a hand-applied surface. There is a square, very minimal again, a square, an implied triangle, two portions of a circle, and a line. The simplest possible components to make a painting. They are designed on a grid. The grid is so that this length is half of the size of the stretcher. So everything in these is related geometrically, which gives it a kind of calm, I think, kind of unity. But they are not about objects. They are not about pictures of things. They are about the thing itself. Just as that mask is about itself. It's about the deer mask with its shell eyes. This is about this object. It is rather like sculpture. This is called, oh shoot, I've just lost it. I'm sorry, I can't tell you. I know, it's catching device with sweepings. I saw this thing up here as a catching device. Isn't that goofy? And there are actually sweepings from the floor embedded in the paint to give it surface. And it's, of course, this marvelous red. A lot of people saw these paintings as very grim. I don't think I did. I really don't. But people seem to think of them as slices that were painful. Well, I didn't see them that way. But if you see them that way, that's fine, because a lot of them had references to me, as I said, to American history, which I think is damn painful. There is a line at the top. I don't know if you can see it on the very edge. By this time, I was double layering the canvas to support the weight of the paint. There is a kind of plastic glop that's rather like plaster of Paris, holding the arc forward. I would have to make a double-layered canvas to be able to do that. They were very simple in their final format, but very difficult to construct, because I was layering canvas with glue and then layering the paint in multiple layers, many layers, sometimes 30 layers of paint. And the paint is heavy, so these weighed a ton. I sent a bunch of these out to George Longfish when he was out in California at Davis to put in a show. And he said, "Kay, you must have been a longshoreman in your last life. These weigh a ton." I'm a big girl. This surface is scratched. And all of them, the surface is agitated to give it texture, to give it life, to give it energy. But the surface is scratched in different ways. Some of them are scratched with a screwdriver, something like anything that had a sharp edge to it. I originally scratched them with my fingernails and it hurt, and I don't like to be hurt, so I didn't do that anymore. But these are big. These are not small paintings. This is Tapias. It's called Le Creux. I believe it's also done in about 75 or 76. I happen to be a big fan of Tapias. This is probably marble dust, among other things. It is very energetic on the surface, very lively. It is abstract, of course, and yet it uses what I would call a four-direction sign in the middle of it. To him, it was not a four-direction sign, of course. I assume it was simply a cross. But there are suggestions of writing. There are suggestions in here, another cross. I see another cross here and here. And very simple, straightforward color. This piece is called Genesis Violent Garden. It is certainly a continuation of these. I did these pieces. This, by the way, is owned by the Metropolitan. They have never shown it. If you know anybody at the Met, call them up and say, "Get it on the wall." This is called Solstice, and it was, of course, done in the winter solstice. And it is, the major changes I made is this is a gouge, but slowly but surely, these paintings progressed from very flat, very quiet color usually, to much more lively, much more visual color. I mean, in other words, the outside world, rather than all in the back of my head. And as soon as you introduce change of color, you introduce space. So even though these things are very object-like, there is a suggestion of space because of the suggestion of color. This is Eva Hess in, I don't know, the 60s. And it just, I found this image long after I had done these paintings. I didn't ever see this piece when I was doing them, but I think that there was something in the air, because this certainly does remind me of the pieces that I was doing. And this is the last piece I did of this group. It's called Cardinal Points. It is now in the herd. They actually put it up often. And every time I do a show that has these four directions crosses in it, I'm asked by someone, well, what is this all about? Why do you use these crosses all the time? And for one thing, it is one of the few images that we could say is a pan-Indian image. You see it in many, many Native people's work across this country. And as a matter of fact, you see it everywhere around the world. My husband Dirk showed me a pot from Japan that had a cross on a four directions cross on it, this kind of equal-armed cross. But to me, it also means something else. It's also about, for me, this unity between Christianity and Native culture. I was raised, as I said, in a white Protestant culture. I was raised in a very Christian home. I don't mean fundamentalist Christian. It had nothing to do with politics. But if you're raised in that kind of home, it's going to affect you later, whether you hang on to that religion or not. And so that, for me, this kind of symbolized this unity of viewpoints about God in our lives. Because most Native people believe in the Creator in their life, and as do Christians. So this painting had a wonderful unifying kind of thing for me. And of course, this calling it cardinal points and with this cardinal red and cardinal birds, and I couldn't resist calling it that. I had a wonderful time painting this. It has sparkles in it, so I just threw sparkles on it, and it was marvelous. And probably one of the first times that I used gold paint. Later on, I used leaf, but the gold paint is always seductive for me. I've lost the years, but I think it was about 85. I did those abstractions, those dense, saponified wax abstractions that are so much about texture. I did those from 1970 something, 79, something like that, for quite a while. I would say on and off for 10 years. But this piece was done in maybe later. But it's when I was asked to do a painting for a show about the American elm. And I actually did an abstraction. I said, I do abstraction. She said, it's fine, that's fine. And so I did this piece that was a painting of the elm with the abstractions, hung them together, and realized that, gee, this is terrific, the way they look together. I love this. And so I finally got rid of that painting, but that is how this started, these diptychs, really almost accidentally. I saw something I liked, and I saw something that had some sort of meaning for me here. This is the Ramapo River. I was going to the Ramapo River then, too. It's in northern New Jersey. It's very wild, but very close to the city. This is not really what I wanted to do. I find this too much an abstraction of the movement of this. And it wasn't my intention to make diptychs that one side was the abstraction of the other. I happen to like the painting of this piece. I wanted to show you something. Does this look like home, Bev? Do you know where that is? No. That's the Saints' garage. I did this when I was in college, and this is Mr. and Mrs. Saint lived next door, and this was their carriage house, which he used as a studio. He was a well-known glass maker, glass designer. He actually worked on the Washington Cathedral. But this is a painting I did when I was in college. I think I was a sophomore. And I wanted to show you something that was basically landscape that I did early on. And of course, this is a walking stick basket. This actually isn't this isn't my basket that I own. It's a photograph that I found. But I have a basket made by a walking stick basket weaver, just exactly like this. This is a typical Cherokee basket. It has a square bottom and a round top. I love that notion that they go from one geometric shape into another in the same form. I think that's a wonderful idea. It has a profundity for me that I just love. In 1989, my husband of almost 30 years passed away very suddenly. He was a relatively young man. He was 55 years old. And I was shaken, to say the least. But because it was totally unexpected. I was out of school by then, out of graduate school, of course, and working in painting and teaching part-time around in various places. And my children were more or less grown by then. I'm not sure children ever actually grow up, but that's all right. But they were out of the house, right? And but that summer, I did a number of paintings that year about that loss. This painting is actually called Loss. And I was by then teaching at Cornell, and I had been living in Cornell, and I was commuting back and forth to see my husband every other week or so. And so I did these paintings about that huge change in my life, about that anger with the fates, that was affecting a change in my life that was huge, huge change. So this is called Loss. It is acrylic with oil on top of it here, which is what's shiny. This part is oil, done with my hands still. All of these were painted with my hands. And this is the waterfall at, what is the name of that park, Paul? What is the name of that park? Treman. It's Treman Park in Ithaca, New York. David is from Ithaca, that's why he knows. At any rate, the waterfalls in Ithaca are gorgeous. It's one of the best things about Ithaca, actually, is the waterfalls. Everybody thinks it's Cornell, but it's really the waterfalls. And they're wonderfully moving. And it became a symbol for me about this huge change in my life and this powerful ongoing water flow, this undammed river, this cascade of water that couldn't be stopped, this tremendous change. And so I painted a long series of these waterfalls in Ithaca, New York. This is called the Abyss. I actually stood here looking down in the water, drawing it, which was stupid, I admit it, because it was a muddy day. A lot of kids did themselves in with those waterfalls. But it was exciting to draw, exciting to paint, and I must say therapeutic. I hate it when people say, oh, art is so relaxing, you know. Well, actually, it's not relaxing, but it does have curative powers. It does get us through the tough times. I think I overheard Rick saying something about that to the docents the other day, that art is, I don't know how other people live their lives without it. You know, I really don't know how they get through life. But they have other ways. They have music, or they, play tennis or something. But I have painting. And everything that I have experienced is in the paintings. But also, the paintings have given me the strength to live fully. So it's a very reciprocal arrangement we have here. Do you all know who this painting is done by? This hangs in the Metropolitan. It's by Manet. It's called The Dead Christ. In fact, they didn't have it up the last time I was there, and I was furious. But I think they loaned it out. It's all right. They can loan out my painting if they want to. This painting was important to me for a lot of reasons. I mean, it happens to be gorgeous. It's rather large. I would say that the Christ figure is certainly life-size. But this is about the corporeal becoming the incorporeal, I believe. And the art historians, of course, disagree with me, but that's all right. No one could paint solid flesh any better than Manet. It is absolutely real, heavy. This is a weighty figure. He's a great big guy. And yet this foot is lifting off the ground. That hand lifts up. He's dead. And yet the body is changing. It's lifting. So that I came to realize that we as painters who are using simple mud, that's all it is, it's mud and oil or mud and polymer or mud and something else, but it really isn't anything of value. It isn't anything of natural magic. It is not moon dust. It is simple, basic stuff. And yet through that simple, basic stuff, we can imply really deep ideas, I believe, which of course is the reason I painted all these years. It's because what paint can imply. So he's implying that this Christ is rising. This piece is called Letting Go. Letting go from chaos to calm. This was the end of the year. This is a big piece. It's 48 by 96, I believe. And it hangs in the Rockwell Museum in Corning. It is also about the river, the waterfalls in Ithaca. And I had come to resolutions of my anger by then. And I really felt that I had let go of all the garbage that I was dealing with. This piece is a charcoal drawing from Tucson, Arizona. It's called Usui Night. And this is the painting that is based on that drawing. I wanted to show you that process because I have oftentimes worked that way, that I would make black and white drawings first and then make paintings based on them. I suppose the black and white drawings were made in part to work out value issues, but I happen to like to draw a lot. So a lot of it is just because I'm doing what I love. You all know who this is? This is Marsden Hartley. I've always loved Marsden Hartley. He has a wonderful awkwardness. It's in Italian, it's goffo. There's just something so wonderfully awkward, and I think we live in an awkward age. There's very little graceful about it. I think he has captured something honest about who we are and what we are here. This is, of course, the Southwest. It has a little crosses, I suppose. This is a Pueblo burial ground. That's what I always figured it was, cemetery. But it's just a wonderful piece, and I've always loved Hartley. This is called, shoot, you know, the brain is really a wreck today. But this piece is called, Where Are the Generations? And I was very active in making a lot of paintings during the quincentenary celebration of Columbus's invasion of the Americas. And I made a small piece of sculpture and wrote a little poem about it. In 1492, we were 20 million. Now we are 2. Where are the children? Where are the generations never born? So that is in repoussé copper right here. And of course, this is Tucson. I did this painting, a drawing of Tucson during the day, and did the painting. I just switched the colors so it became night. I thought the night was what it had to be. I think it's, by the way, this part of the reason the copper was in there is I happen to like metals, but also the land was really raped to get those metals out of it. This is, I should have, this is in the wrong place. This is With Love to Marston is what this is called. And the reason I called it With Love to Marston is because I thought that this also has a rather awkward quality. There is something about that liver red and that pissy yellow that I think is very awkward. But I enjoy the painting anyway. It's going to Nairobi to be in the embassy there for a couple years. God knows what they'll think of it. This is called, I went to Rome, and I've been to Italy many times, and it's had a lot of effect on my painting. But this piece is called Venere Alpina, and I believe it's about my aging. I was about 60 when I went. And within the copper, which is rusted, I figure that rust has to be about aging, and what else, you know? Within the rust there are sapphires, plastic, but sapphires hidden. And this is part of the Prealpi in the Veneto region, northern Veneto region, but of course it's American Rockies color. I had a good time rusting that steel, actually. This painting is in New York. It's a Duccio, and it's, of course, Christ telling Satan to get thee behind me. And it's a wonderful painting. Of course, the star, unfortunately, or fortunately maybe, of this is the devil. The devil is just wonderful. He's a nasty fellow. You know, the witch always gets the starring role. But I love this painting. I love this crazy mountains. There is a playfulness about this painting that I assume Duccio intended, but it has a gold leaf ground. It is in the Frick Museum. You can go see it anytime. This is not Duccio's mountains. These are the Alps in northern Italy. And this is called Il Regalo, the gift. And the gift, of course, is Italy itself. And this big figure, this icon-like figure, this almost petroglyphic figure, sits among those Rockies. See what happens when you take an American to Italy? Sits in these Alps and is part of the Alps, incorporated into the Alps. By the way, the color here is just god-awful. I'm sorry, I have no explanation for that. I got into dancing figures. All of this is very influenced by Italy, of course. The gold, the interest in figures. And there's one other huge jump that I made at this time. I stopped using my hands. I started using a brush. And of course, the abstraction is gone. So Italy made some huge changes in my work. This is, again, the Alps. This is in Fieta, outside of Fieta. And this is called gioioso, which means joyous, of course, because it was a joyous time in my life. And dancing is about, at least here, that joy. What is more fun than dancing around naked? Not many people get the opportunity to do that very often. Should take it. This is called Dane in Arizona. So I did a lot of paintings having to do with figures. I hadn't painted figures since those early flat figures you saw in the 70s, and this was by then, end of the 90s. This piece is called Orchide, leaving the garden. You'll notice the figures are going in opposite directions. This is a little painting, by the way. This was from the last show. This is called Our Land. It's 36 by 72 inches. It uses parfleche bag patterns from the Nez Perce people. Of course, Chief Joseph was a Nez Perce, and I've always been interested in their history. One of the reasons I like parfleche bags is they're made by women. This was completely women's work. The men painted buffalo robes. The women painted parfleche. And the painters who were really good were very honored by their people. The parfleche bags can certainly be seen here, as many museum collections have them. They are American abstraction, in my view. They were not done for the same reason that the modernists did them in Europe, but they are abstract nevertheless. The scholar Gaylord Torrance said that the reason the women did them was that they are closer to the cosmos, so they can do abstraction. This is from the Bitterroot Mountains, by the way, which were some of the mountains that Chief Joseph and his people crossed. This is Bear Paw Battlefield. I told you that I would show you something from Bear Paw. This is Bear Paw Battlefield. It's, I believe, 12 inches by 48. Does that make sense? Yes. So it's very narrow, very long. And it is, at first when you see it, it's just a simple landscape. But then you realize that something is happening, and it gets dark in the sky, and then it gets red over here. And the land there, the place, carries a memory of that battle, carries a memory of those people that died there. Chief Joseph's brother died at that battlefield. There is a aura there that you can feel. And I'm not into woo-woo a lot, but there is an aura that you can absolutely feel. That is a place where Native people go today to honor their dead brothers and sisters. So that this painting is about that place, but also about what happened there. It is called Hear the Voices. This is also Bitterroot Mountains, and it's a pattern from a corn husk bag. I like this notion of using pattern with landscape because it implies that the people still own that land. It's still there. It's still their land, but they are still there, in a sense. And also, it's rather like using the abstractions that I used early on. One side was abstract and the other not. These are drawings. I may have another one. This is a drawing that was done in preparation for the paintings in part, but it was also, these drawings were also shown individually. They're about 25 inches by 50. This piece is called We're Still Dancing. Damn it. But just We're Still Dancing. It's in the Hunter Museum in Chattanooga. And it's Taos behind it. The road to Santa Fe. And this is called Farewell to the Smokies, and it's in the Denver Art Museum. It's, of course, about the Trail of Tears. Years ago, I swore that I would never do a Trail of Tears painting. They're also damn corny. They're really, you know, I wouldn't do that. And yet, of course, I had to eventually. When I finally saw the Smokies and realized what those people left, I had to do a painting about what they had given up, what they had been forced to give up. So this is about this beautiful, healthy land that had so much to offer them. And they went to Oklahoma. I'm being told that I should stop, but I'm going to continue. This painting is in the Metropolitan Museum also. They haven't hung this either. And I wanted to show it to you because it's one of the few pieces I've ever done of winter. It is the Wallowa Mountains in Oregon with a gold leaf. It is white gold, of course, but a gold leaf sky. I find that it's impossible for me to not keep returning to these leafed paintings. I haven't talked at all about what the diptychs are about. I will later if you wish, but I wanted to show you this last painting to remind you where we started, but also to talk a little bit about what I expect of paintings. I expect paintings to communicate ideas. I expect paintings to stimulate people to think. I expect paintings to give the eye pleasure. And I expect them in some way to be beautiful. Beautiful used to be a four-letter word, you know. It is now accepted to be beautiful again. But I have a friend, I was complaining in a letter to her that my paintings are no longer edgy. And she said, don't worry, Kay. Edgy, beautiful is the new edgy. And I like that. I think I'll end there. Thank you very much. Do we have questions? Questions? Then I have a little coda to my story to tell you. And you don't have to record this, of course. In 2007, in my last show, I met a man named Dirk Bach. He's an artist. And we fell in love almost immediately, you know, within a month or so. And we are now together. We had a blessing ceremony in 2009, and I was alone for 20 years, and I had no idea that I was lonely. If anybody had asked, I'd say, no, of course not. I have a busy life. I'm a painter. I have a lot to do with my life, you know. I didn't realize I was lonely until I was lonely no longer. So I've had a beautiful life as an artist. And I have a wonderful life now. I'm a happy old lady. Thank you.